Speaker, Happy New Year to you and
Happy
to
New Year,
honorable
madam.
colleagues. I think I haven't been on this floor since the beginning of this year. We've been busy. No, you have a copy.
Don't mind, it shouldn't be a problem. They'll be
I never
discussed
had
on
your own
Tuesday.
copy also. It's on the screen. Right Honorable Speaker, I'll go straight to...
But at least the speaker should have a copy. If you have an extra copy, you can share with me. But go on,
I have
Hon.
an extra copy there.
Go on, they will.
No, give it. Right Honorable Speaker, I have only 8 dissenting opinions. And Right Honorable Speaker, I take the opportunity to also thank the Budget Committee, where we worked hard and forged some kind of concurrence on a number of issues. So 90% we agree. My first issue, Right Honorable Speaker, is an unrealistic majority report. And it's where I ended. The majority report has come up with a funding gap of 6.1 trillion as unfunded priorities without identifying the source of funds for the priorities identified. Government came up with the resource envelope showing the proposed resources of revenue in the budget framework paper and the expenditures. Now, for Parliament, and this Honorable Speaker affects committees of Parliament, to simply come up with the funding gaps without identifying the source of funding is an academic trip in this process. It should be imperative that committees and even ministers who in cabinet approve these spending limits, then they come to committees of Parliament and cry for more resources, knowing those resources are not there, and burdening committees with the funding gaps and priorities is uncalled for. And it renders this whole exercise simply of no import, essentially. So that's why I would defer that we ask the majority committee. You have identified 6 trillion in additional funding. It will push the budget to 50.4 trillion. Where is the source of funding? 54. Where is the source of funding? So why do we engage in some academics here? That's my point of view, is that the whole of that report is unrealistic. The second one, Right Honorable Speaker, is on tax exemption. Right Honorable Speaker, we are having an 8 trillion tax exemption in this year's budget. 8 trillion tax exemption. And have I just sampled a few companies where we have exempted. And then Parliament now takes a critical decision where it is not high time that we comprehensively review the tax exemption. Look, one example I've identified, as few I sampled, Oil Palm Uganda Limited, value added tax, 155 billion. Uganda Oil Palm Limited, corporate tax. Now, corporate tax is profit tax. Corporation tax is profit tax. A company has come here, you've given it land, you've reduced their on power they consume, reduced power costs, you give them water at reduced rates, they make a profit. They don't pay. Government says, just walk away with your profit. So some of these companies now, roofing, Uganda Roofing Mills Limited. This company has been here for the last so many years. Why on earth does it not pay a corporate tax? Does it need affirmative action after some 20 years? Honestly. And we are here grappling with the lack of resources to do bridges and blah, blah. We are letting some fellows walk away with so many billions of money. Steel and tube industries. Even that one, 5 billion corporate tax. Uganda Post Limited.
Corporation tax.
Corporation tax. 15 billion. Uganda Post Limited. Value added tax. Uganda Post Limited. Payee. Now, when it comes to payee, where they don't pay payee, Honorable colleague, let me tell you what happens. That when government of Uganda exempts a company not to pay payee, government of Uganda goes its way to pay that money. That means me, the poor me, I'm paying payee on behalf of Post and Telecommunication, Uganda Post. That's what happens. And we are in this era budgeting with this kind of mentality. And that goes to Uganda Post Limited. You go to spinners. These fine spinners, Uganda Limited. For example, stamp duty. The government of Uganda not only gave them every incentive, we even gave them 20 billion working capital. Still they can't pay stamp duty. Worth 13 billion. Actually, 239 million. Stamp duty. Why? There's this Chinese company here called Finance Ishugi Construction PSV Limited. It's a special purpose vehicle. It can't pay payee. And so many others, specialized hospital, Rubo and those ones, they can't pay payee. So, our appeal, right, honorable colleagues, last year, honorable speaker, we passed a resolution.
Just Honorable Kivumbi, what I just wanted to understand is where I'm seeing withholding tax.
Yes, that is withholding tax.
Go on.
Yeah, withholding tax. People refuse to pay withholding tax, and we excuse them. Now, we are talking about, that's why we have accumulated 8 trillion in tax exemption. We have a total of, Honorable Speaker, will come to it, of an equivalent amount of money, where government has failed over years to pay. So if you reviewed this, and just realized some 4 trillion out of 8, we can easily balance up our books and be able to do more. So it is high time this parliament put up a committee of inquiry into tax exemption. Right, Honorable Speaker. And the law is very clear, Honorable Speaker. We've not been doing our work. Section 77 of the Public Finance Management Act mandates every agency, every ministry where you tax exempt to come every 3 months to Parliament and account. 1, the cost and the benefits to Uganda of that tax exemption. Do they do so? No. Therefore, we should go for a committee to fully overhaul these tax exemption procedures in Uganda. And the Minister of Finance has been taking it upon himself to say, I exempt this, I exempt this, I exempt this, as if these are personal coffers. Right, Honorable Speaker, the second point, now, Honorable Mudim, you see why I should come up with a minute report. I'm just joking. Right, Honorable Speaker, an realistic resource envelope. Right, Honorable Speaker, the issues we get with the Minister of Finance is that they come here and give you a resource envelope of 49 trillion. And on 1st July of every month, they sit down before we go to another financial year and do a supplementary reallocation on day 1. The essence why they come up with the ballooned resource envelope that will not be fulfilled is to have a bigger cut of a third. Is it a third? The 3%. So that they have a huge, for which they will do secondary appropriation. Go ahead and fund items that were rejected by Parliament. But when I look at the resource envelope, they are telling you they are going to revenue is going to rise by 3 trillion. Now, when I look at the last 5 years, not any single year have we really met our revenue targets. Not in every single year. So how do you fool us that this year you are going to realize 3 more trillion without any added tax, because inherently the homogeneous growth of the economy projected at 6% will give you that tax yield. It has not happened, and you are based on that anticipation to draw a national budget. And we are here 49 trillion, you raise the expectation of the country, and when you look at this table, which I've written down here, Right Honorable Speaker, not in any single year have they realized 100% tax revenue or a surplus. But what has been rising, honorable colleagues, every single year, spontaneously, has been debt. When you study the column of debt progressively, I think in this table they should have listed the
Honorable Kivumbi, as you get that, because we usually hear URA announcing we've corrected the surplus, we've corrected surplus. Okay? Now, I thought the targets given to URA are targets against projected revenue in the national budget.
Yes.
But you are saying they've never realized 100%, but they're always saying they've corrected the surplus. So because monthly target should be projected against the projected revenue, we pass here.
Actually, Right Honorable Speaker, the source of my table is the table that was supplied to us by URA. URA shows it's only 1819 when they met the target. But in 1920, they targeted 20 trillion in revenue collection. They collected 16. In 2021, it was 21 trillion. They collected 19. 2021-22, it was 22 trillion. They collected 21. So it's only this year that we don't have. So the figure they are giving the country, we are correcting supplies. From where? From where? So that's why failure of that collection is that every single year the borrowing, 1819, we borrowed 24. The borrowing was at 24 trillion. 1920, the borrowing went to 28. 1920 went to 28.
It's meaning 2019, 2020.
2019,
very
2020. Simple. So I'm only reading the other figures.
Yeah.
2019, 2020, it went to 28. 2020, 2021, it went to 70. The borrowing is down. That is the debt stock. The borrowing went to 36. Last year, it was 35. Net borrowing in total, from 44 to 57 to 70 to 78, we are now at 86. The reason why we are performing that way is because we make unrealistic budget revenue collections. And consequently, we raise our recurrent expenditure and find ourselves, we have no money at the end of a fourth quarter to even pay salaries. We go to the domestic market and do borrow. So the only way we can tame this appetite, Right Honorable Speaker, and in the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility, we pledged increased government expenditure to direct proportion to increased revenue collection. So that if you want to increase expenditure of government, show us that net increase in the expected what? Revenue. But a realistic way should have been to always project the budget for what was realistically realized in the previous financial year. If you budget that way, you will never have all these crises we are having. The reason why we're having these guys at the Ministry of Finance are lazy. They go for easier options. Because the law permitted them to borrow on securities, they think they can run there every time. That's why, Honorable Speaker, we must review the Public Finance Management Act. One, to remove the 3%. Okay? To remove the 3% that erodes the parliamentary powers of appropriation. Secondly, we also put stringent borrowing on through securities, because that free hand has been demonstrably abused. Now, on debt rollover. Right Honorable Speaker, and you should provide the space for debate on this thing called debt rollover. Now, our projected revenues have been rising from, by 2018-19, our revenues were at 16 trillion. We are now, even by our poor standards, we are now at 25, okay, by our poor standards. But even in a personal level, at a personal level, if your incomes have been rising that, it would be very funny and scandalous for your debt to grow. For the debt you fail to pay to grow. The debt can grow in economics, I know, but the one you are failing to pay cannot grow. So that's why for me this financial year, I think it's high time we capped any extra revenue we generate as a country should go towards tackling this issue of debt rollover.
Now, Honorable Kivumbi, we can conclude?
Yes, I can conclude.
I know it's a very sweet message you're giving us.
I'm going to conclude with 2 items.
Yes.
The first item I want to conclude with is the road fund. Right Honorable colleague, I know the majority committee has come up with a very generous recommendation of the 1.5 billion per district to tackle the issue of road fund. But Right Honorable Speaker, we passed a road fund act. The road fund act, government has failed to operationalize it, save for the levy on fuel. The levy on fuel is intended, a portion of it, to go towards the road fund, so that local governments, our roads, under interconnectivity, you have enough money to rehabilitate and maintain a national road network. Government grabbed the money, took it for general budget support, and failed to actualize and operationalize the provisions of the road fund. Right Honorable Speaker, there are 2 issues here. One, we are going into some kind of rationalization. Members of Parliament, protect the road fund. Second point is, let us urge government to operationalize the Road Fund Act so that we put real money, secured, fenced for maintaining of our roads in the districts. MPs today, members of Parliament today are using their mega emoluments to maintain roads, to build bridges, and members of Parliament are voted in and voted out because of the poor state of the roads. Yet government failed to operationalize the road fund. Right Honorable Speaker, I want to end with this one where I have a rebellion from my shadow minister. On this one, I even have a rebellion from my shadow minister, the one of the National Forest Authority. Right Honorable Speaker, it is high time, and I want to urge this Parliament to block the budget for the National Forest NFA. The reason why, 15 years ago, when they set up the National Forest Authority, our natural forest cover stood at 60%. They were set up with a mandate to protect and restore. Therefore, they were to maintain the 60 and add more to the natural forest. What has happened? 15 years down the road, our natural forest cover has reduced to 9%. 15 years down the road, we shall not have any natural forest standing on the watch of the National Forest Authority. Now, how do we continue to fund an agency that is more or less a terrorist in as far as maintaining forests in this country? These are proper terrorists. And I have been speaking to these guys, gentlemen, these armed officers in the Ministry of Defense. The question of environment, the question of protecting our is the question of national security. With our poor economies in Africa, for as long as the natural environment that my mother uses to grow cassava depends on, the regiment, the potato, the rains don't come, the people are going to march on the street. And therefore not be able to match them. That's why I call NFA a terrorist authority. And I don't care about the protection from my Minister of Environment here. I don't give a damn. So my own view, Right Honorable Speaker, is to urge this Parliament, unless you have a very commending case and commitment, we no longer get value for money by we gave them the army, we gave them police. These guys have soldiers to protect the forest. Instead, they are at 9%. It is high time we stop this destruction. And I beg to move. Right, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you.